folks. Welcome back to the DPS Rodcast off-season edition. Second one we've done here, and today we've got a special topic because it's tournament time, right? Everybody pretty fired up right now because the basketball tournaments have begun. Women's, men's basketball tournaments for the NCAA. The conference tournaments are going on now, and March Madness will be starting soon. So in the spirit of those things, since I'm a football nut and don't really care a lot about basketball, we'll go ahead and use our hobby from the last 14 years and do a tournament of the champions of the last 14 years in college football. So as you guys know, the DPS Analytics, my name's Dan DeSetto, by the way, the creator of the DPS, which is formerly known as the DeSetto playoff system. It was a 12-team playoff developed in 2007, 2008, and it's an analytics hobby, basically, just figuring out could I rank teams by a computer and, do a better job of picking games, the winners and losers of games, than just the average person. So that was the hobby, that was the challenge, and using only numbers to do so, only box score numbers to do so. That's it. So that's what we did to start our hobby, and we are into our 14th year now of this hobby. Playing around, we started actually betting against Las Vegas using the numbers exclusively, and that is what this Rodcast became, the DPS college football Rodcast, and occasionally with some NFL topics thrown in as well. So what I wanted to do, the way my DPS GSA ranking works, our game statistical assessment grading system that we use for all teams, ranking every single performance that a team has in a ranking scale based on statistical domination. It's opponent adjusted efficiency is basically what it is, and it creates a grade for every time a team steps on the football field. And you can stack those for a particular year. And the interesting thing is you can stack years against each other and figure out who was most dominant in their particular year that they played and stack those teams against each other. Everybody has an opinion of, who the greatest teams of all time are. And we're going to use the analytics, the numbers that we have, to tell you what the DPS thinks is the best teams in the era that we have covered. So that's what we're doing, a 14 team, because there's been 14 years of the DPS. 2011 was when we first started keeping stats. Up to last year, Ohio State Buckeyes champions of 2024. So all of the champions of those particular years are in a 14-team tournament against each other, seeded according to that team's average GSA, which is combined offense and defense, average GSA for that particular season. You take all those grades, you stack them against each other for all 1,900 teams that have been graded since 2011, and you figure out where they place within those, and that's how I seeded this 14-team FBS Champions tournament that we're going. So this is the FBS Champions tournament based on the DPS era. Unfortunately, I don't have some of those legendary teams from before. The Texas team, 2007, the USC teams back then, the University of Miami, 2001 teams, and things like that. I don't go back far enough in my stats to have those teams in there. All I have is the last 14 years. So this is what we're going to do. And so here we go. So this is how, remember we talked about how the teams are seeded is based on their average GSA and how it stacks up in history. So the number one seeded team, here's the tournament. As you can see, the number one seeded team and getting the bye week, so to speak, the I guess you would call it hypothetical bye week, 2019 LSU Tigers, the number 2 seed, second most dominant team within their particular year based on all of their games that they played and the statistics that they rolled up in those games. Opponent adjusted, don't forget, 2023 Michigan Wolverines, number 2 seed. Okay, so that's the seeding. As you can see, here's all the rest of the teams seeded. 3 seed, 4 seed, right? 3 seed 2011 Alabama, 4 seed 2024 Ohio State, and so on. You can read these seeds right here for all the champions of the DPS era. And that is based on average GSA once again. Now, it would be pretty boring of a podcast if I would just, okay, the 3 seed's going to beat the 14, the 7's going to beat the 10. If you just had the higher seeded team is going to win that game. Well, GSA is not always the top indicator of who's going to win a particular game against each other, even though I digress. In the 2024 playoffs, the GSA was a perfect 11-0 in the first 12-team playoff. It was a perfect 11-0 at predicting who would win all 11 of the playoff games that we had. However, what I did to create the matchups and who was going to win a particular matchup, I used my tiering system to do that. That's slightly different than the GSA. The GSA is basically a measure of how statistically balanced a team is, right? So how balanced are they across all the statistics that we keep track of, right, in the box score? And so a team that's got extreme balance is going to be highly rated, over a team that is, really good in certain areas, but maybe not so good in other areas, right? So we used our tiering system on the matchups. And what that did, spoiler alert, that created 5 upsets within the 13 games. There's 13 games in a 14-team playoff. Those 13 games, we had 5 upsets, right? 5 times where the lower seeded team defeated a higher seeded team in a hypothetical matchup of those 2 teams. Now, first thing I want to say before I start going on through the rounds is all of these teams are champions. They're all champions. They're all fantastic. Don't start throwing tomatoes at your screen and sending, profanity-laced comments, over here about your team is way better than that team. Basically, these teams are all champions. No one's going to ever take that away. They were the best in their particular season. They won their playoff or their BCS championship in a couple cases, or their 12-team playoff in the case of the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're the champions, and they're deserving. All of them are deserving champions. And that's one thing one of my favorite things about doing this little exercise is, in looking back on all the teams and studying them, it was kind of amazing, the amount of incredible players that these teams all had. It's like a who's who of football, of the game of American football for the past 14 years is represented on these championship teams. I mean, can you imagine, a matchup like 2014? I'll show you here again. Here's the start of the playoff. Let's look down in the bottom left-hand corner. You have the 13 seed 2014, Ohio State Buckeyes, and that story that they were going into, yes, Ohio Stadium, in a hypothetical matchup against this year's 2024 team. Jeremiah Smith, Will Howard, Emeka Buka, all these guys, right? Basically Sawyer on defense, playing against Zeke Elliott, and and that team coming in, and just how cool would that be if you could actually somehow have some alternate reality where the 2014, the 20 Joey Bosa and Von Bell and Michael Thomas and all of these guys coming in, Michael Bennett, Eli Apple, those guys all coming in and, taking on 2024's version. Cardell Jones, right? The Cardell Jones story of the 2014 Ohio State Buckeyes in that first year of the 4-team playoff, taking on the winner of the first 12-team playoff. How cool would that be if you could do something like that, right? 2018 Clemson team, that excellent team, Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne and, Christian Wilkins and Dexter Lawrence, that defensive line that produced 4 NFL players straight off of it, Cleveland Farrell and those guys, Hunter Renfrow in the 2016 team and Deshaun Watson, Mike Williams and Artavis Scott, and those guys from the 2016 team taking on, the 2011 Barrett Jones and that offensive line, DJ Fluker, and, those guys, Chance Warmack and the guys from that 2011 Alabama team. Imagine that matchup, and, the teams like the Tua Tagovailoa came in and saved the day for Alabama. That team, the throw to Devontae Smith, taking on a team like that legendary 2021 Georgia defense, right? Taking those guys on, Nolan Smith and those guys, just what kind of a fight would that be? Brock Bowers, trying to cover Brock Bowers. Just so cool if you could do something like this. I know a lot of you probably do these sort of things on your PlayStation or your Xbox, whatever, using the college football games, and it's a lot of fun to think about. So that's what we've done here, but we used purely stats to do it, the same way the PlayStation game is going to use algorithms and things like that to figure out who would actually, how those games would actually go if you put them on automatic mode. So, so that's basically what we're doing here, putting it on automatic mode, figuring out who the best team is, not measuring heart, and somebody stepping up, things like that. It's purely looking at statistics and dominance. All right, we're back after a short break. Here we go. Let's flash one more time. Flash the seedings up, and then we'll go right on to round number 1. Here's the seedings real quick. And now, without further ado, here are the results of the first round of games. So starting in the upper left-hand corner, we've got 2020. Alabama is victorious over 2015 Alabama. So that was Devontae Smith, Jalen Watt, Najee Harris, and Brian Robinson Jr. Yeah, sorry, I had to look at my notes. Brian Robinson Jr. on that one, and So 2020, Alabama victorious with Bryce Young and company over 2015 Alabama. So 2015 Alabama was Jake Coker's, Calvin Ridley, that team, and Derrick Henry and company. So 2015 champions go down to the 2020 Alabama Crimson Tide. Down below, right below it, in the number 9 seed versus the number 8 matchup, Clemson. 2018 Clemson gets our first upset that we're covering here. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, etc., all those defensive linemen that we talked about. The the Power Ranger guys. We had Christian Wilkins and Austin Bryant and Cleveland Farrell and Dexter Lawrence. Those guys, and the wide receiver core: T. Higgins, Justin Ross. That was some team that Clemson fielded that year. They're victorious over 2012 Alabama and move on to the next round. Our first upset in the Battle of Ohio State's champions. We talked about that one. The Cardale Jones magic runs out, and the 2024 team, the current champions of college football, are victorious in week 1. So we've got Jeremiah Smith and Will Howard moving on to the next round. And over on the right-hand side, 2011 Alabama. That's we talked a little bit about that offensive line, DJ Fluker and Chance Warmack and Barrett Jones, and that offensive line kind of were the stars of that one. A.J. McCarron, those guys, take out, and a tremendous defense back then. I don't think they had C.J. Mosley yet. No, that was Dante Hype. Yeah, they did have C.J. Mosley, Dre Kirkpatrick, Dante Hightower, those guys. 2011 Alabama defeats the Clemson Tiger upstart team from 2016 that won that game in Tampa. I was in that game. I was there in Tampa when Clemson won that game. After losing, I was in Phoenix the year before when we lost to Alabama with that onside kick and all that. So that was definitely a lot of joy for the Tiger faithful to get past Alabama and get that win, but not in this case. 2011 Alabama defeats 2016 Clemson and moves on to the quarterfinal round. 2022 Georgia pulls off our second upset of the bracket here with a win over 2013 FSU. That's Jameis Winston and Timmy Jernigan and those guys, Kelvin Benjamin, that excellent 2013 team. But the 2022 team with Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers and Stetson Bennett and all those guys, just too much for the 2013 Seminoles to handle, and they take the win there. That on our second upset. And in the upper right, we have 2021 Georgia taking out Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts, and the 2017 Alabama Crimson Tide. So 2021 Georgia moves on to the semifinals and will play Michigan, play 2023 Michigan in the next round. And that is it for the first round action. So let's move right along into the quarterfinal games. And in the quarterfinals, we'll start again in the upper left. LSU. This one's going to be controversial. LSU. LSU statistically, their defense was good, not great. Their offense was beyond great. So I think, in a lot of the data, we talked about what's important to be a champion. Offense outweighs defense in individual game matchups. And so offense wins. And the 2019 LSU Tigers, with the best offense in the history of the DPS, get the win there against 2020, a really good 2020 Alabama team. And then down below, our third upset. Number 9 seeded Clemson takes out this year's champion 2024 Ohio State in an extremely close game. This one was less than a point of difference between 2018 Clemson and 2024 Ohio State. So that excellent Trevor Lawrence-led Clemson team moves on to the next round. And over on the other side, another upset. That's upset number 4 out of 5. We told you there's going to be 5 upsets. This is number 4. The fourth upset is 2022 Georgia taking out 2011 Alabama. Two similar styles, but a little more offense on the 2022 Georgia team compared to the 2011 Alabama team was the difference. And another close matchup. Georgia takes the win there. And another squeaker at the top right-hand corner. Another less than 1 point difference between 2021 Georgia and 2023 Michigan. Michigan prevails and moves on to the semifinals. The semifinal rounds are set. It's going to be LSU versus Clemson on one side of the bracket. 2019 LSU, 2018 Clemson on one side of the bracket. 2023 Michigan versus 2022 Georgia on the other side of the bracket. Remember, we've got one upset remaining. Will it be? We got 3 games left and one upset. Who is it going to be? So we move on to get the results of the semifinals and move to the final matchup. And here it is. Well, LSU gets the win over my Tigers. So LSU moves on to the next round, to the finals, and takes out Trevor and company and Dabo Swinney, and the 2018 Clemson Tigers made it to the Final Four but did not prevail. LSU gets the win there. That game would have been really something to watch too, with the amount of talent flying around on those two teams. And the same for the Michigan and Georgia. There would be enough defensive talent in that game on the right-hand side to fill up, 4 Hall of Fames or whatever. There's just a lot of really good football players. Michigan and Georgia. And Georgia gets the upset. That is our final upset. So I guess she kind of spoils the ending there. We know who wins the final round. Let's go ahead and just flip to it. Our DPS era champion from 2011 to 2024, the LSU Tigers, the number 1 team, the best of the best according to our method, purely statistics, 100%, no biases, no nothing, just statistics is all. And it makes sense with LSU, the most dominant team we saw in the 14 years that we've been watching football, and keeping stats. And one of the things that is remarkable is the 2019 team had about 6 super teams that year. and LSU prevailed over all of them. They only had 2 close games that year. One was against Auburn, one was against Alabama. Pretty close games. Everybody else they blew completely out of the water. Back-to-back weeks, those 2 close games. Everybody else got blown completely out of the water, including my own Clemson Tigers in 2019, the champions of Ohio State. 2019 Ohio State, also an outstanding team. In fact, the number 1 team all time in average GSA was the 2019 Ohio State Buckeyes. They didn't actually win the championship, obviously. LSU did. But, so LSU got through a really tough year, and they are the DPS era's number 1 championship team. And maybe a surprise to some people, but that is how it turns out. They are the only team that was 13-0 in matchups against every other championship team. That was your LSU Tigers. So, Tiger fans are happy, but not this Tiger fan, not the Clemson Tiger fans. All right, that's it for our fun little exercise here. Hypothetical FBS Champions Playoff. Like I said, the only thing, it's just fun. They're all champions. Doesn't really matter who wins some silly little thing like this. However, it's good for argument's sake. Whatever. Post a comment if you want, but I need some subscriptions. I need some likes because this is a new channel I'm trying to build up. In the fall, obviously, we will start to do what we're here for, which is our plays, our DPS bets that we do. We use the computer to do it exclusively. And last year we had a rough start. We had a very rough start. We finished very strong, 63% by the end of the year, and we were really cooking at the end of the year. Unfortunately, we had a really, really tough start. The DPS is not really designed for teams to change as much as they've been changing in the early seasons of the year. Early weeks of the seasons of the year. Early weeks of the season when if teams have a lot of transfer portal activity and a lot of changes due to coaching moves, the DPS isn't designed to handle that as well as it had been able to handle these sort of things in the past when they weren't as numerous. So, anyways, in the fall we'll be back with our DPS plays, against the spread plays, possibly some money line stuff. Most of the time it's against the spread. Those will be in August. We will start those August 23rd, only 160-something days away. And we'll be kicking off the 2025 college football season, and we can't wait for it. But we got some fun activities for the summer to get us through until then. So, including this, maybe I'll do an NFL one if I get a whim to do it. But this is the college football version of the FBS Champions Tournament. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the DPS All Football Talk YouTube page. And give us a comment, give us a like if you can. We appreciate you. Dan DeSetto for the DPS All Football Talk. See you next time.